So with that, we had some examples, and next I would like to move towards some, let's say, European initiatives, and I invite Jens Weibull to the floor, who will give us the view and the experience on that. And I like the presentation, the team already, together we are stronger. So please, Jens, here you are, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nick, and thank you for inviting us here. It's good to see a number of familiar faces, but also a number of new ones. The title is Together We Are Stronger, and that's actually the title of our Jubilee video that was prepared a couple of years ago to celebrate our 40th anniversary. It's still, you can find it on YouTube or via the UCBJR website. Giovanni said at the beginning that the plant is actually the fundament for everything, and it's without plants we wouldn't be a civilization. I would say I fully agree with your view there. And you know that we've been shipping around plant genetic material across the globe for centuries, and also that the worries for the loss of plant genetic resources has been there for a long time. In fact, already almost 90 years ago, Harry Harlan and colleagues wrote in the Yearbook of Agriculture in 1936 that they were afraid of losing land races in Ethiopia and in Tibet that would be valuable for future barley breed. So the context is not a new one. The fears have been there for a long time. Well, we're here today discussing it, and we're still struggling with the challenges. ECPGR was born following a process that actually began already with Eucarpia during the 1950s, and then in 1980 the network was created as a joint, let's say, effort of UNDP, FAO, and Eucarpia. So there's been a long process, but we're still around, working on plant genetic resources. So we involved a number of stakeholders all across of Europe, and as you see, the main objectives of the network is to conserve ex situ and in situ plant genetic resources, food and agriculture, provide access, and increase their use. So this is the fundamental of the network. That's why we're here. ECPGR is supported by member contributions. So countries are members of the network, and we can also so that our budget is based on membership contributions. But there can also be occasional additional funding from those member countries that have larger wallets than others, and for this we're very, very grateful. This is how ECPGR is being construed. We have as you see, we have a governing body, a steering committee at the very top, consisting of national coordinators of each country. Some of them are here in this room. We have an executive committee consisting of a small number of elected national coordinators, and also chaired by a person. And then that particular person here is Diane Leblanc, sitting in this room. And the executive committee, let's say, is an operative group of people trying to in collaboration with the secretariat, trying to execute all the decisions that are taken by the steering committee. We have a coordinating secretariat located in Italy, although spread around the country. But I would say that a very important part of the network are formed by the working groups, and we have today we have 20 different working groups focusing on different crops. And the latest one is actually the berries working group funded for established in 2019. We also have a number of thematic working groups for proper relatives, documentation information on farm conservation management, and the most recently established one, which is on cryopreservation in 2022. And also last year, at the steering committee meeting in Lisbon, we established a gene bank managers network. So this is just to give you a picture of what the working groups do. Approximately a quarter of the ECBGL budget goes into working group activities. And I would say the cornerstone is really participation, to do things together with less money, although we would like to do even more with more money, but we don't have that for the time being. But this is just to give you an idea of what is being produced by the various working groups. Descriptors, guidelines or standards, reports, crop databases are being maintained, and so on and so forth. Some of the initiatives that ECBGL has taken over the course of the years are these, and I will go through them very briefly. And let's start with documentation. And Giovanna mentioned already the Eurisco catalog, an online catalog that contains today around 2.1 million accessions maintained ex situ. It's the largest part of the genesis that is maintained on the crop trust. 400 institutes are collaborating, contribution here, 43 member countries, and there are also, Eurisco also contains information about more than 3,000 in-situ populations. And as you see, it's not only passport data, but also characterization and evaluation data is being included there. So this is really a very large and important component of the ECBGL. AGIS was established, well, you know, gene banks conserve a lot of material, and I think some decades ago we decided, well, there's too much duplication in gene bank collections. We need to work more rationally. So AGIS was really a way to share responsibilities and avoid duplication. It's based on a memorandum of understanding, a country signs. And the aim is to make conservation better and only focus on those that are genetically unique, and then making them available under the SMTA. So this has been really successful. And in Eurisco, if you browse Eurisco, you will see what accessions are which is available on the AGIS. The AGIS is based upon members of ECBGL and the treaty, or those countries that are willing to provide or share the material in the same conditions as that of the treaty. EVA is quite a recently established network, participatory network between breeding companies, research institutes, gene banks, etc., to increase use of those collections that are available. And it's based on also on a memorandum of understanding that was actually signed with the former ESA, the European Seed Secretary, now Euroseeds. Szonja was actually signing for at the time. It is funded by the German Federal Republic for this period, 2019 to 24. So that's where you see how additional external funding can actually play a very, very important role to our work. We also have, since a couple of years ago, a journal, Genetic Resources, where you are, it's free and open access journal, and Sandra is actually heading the editorial committee of the journal. So this very quick overview I hope it has shown you that the 40 years that have more than 40 years that have passed since the establishment of the ECGR has really yielded a number of very strong and important components. And we are now in our 11th phase that started this year and will run for 5 years for them all. Despite this, we know that there is a threat to plant sedentary resources. We've been talking about this several times already. So we know that we have challenges relating to climate change, to increase food production, and so on and so forth. Where Theo mentioned that genetic resources are not effectively conserved, although many gene banks they struggle with small resources and try to do the best. So we need to have a strong political commitment this way. And as a result of an EU-funded project, the Generous Bridge project, we were involved in developing genetic resources strategies, both for 3 domains, the plants, animals, and forests, but also individual strategies for the individual domains. And these were actually developed in line with Council conclusions of the Farm to Fork strategy back in October of 2020, where the Commission was actually invited to present a strategy for genetic resources, which is based on the work of the FAO Commission of genetic resources. And among those many recommendations that you can read about in these strategies, these are just a few. For instance, to expand in situ conservation of proper relatives of wild food plants, to promote more on-farm plant and resource management, conservation and management, to consolidate ex-situ conservation, building on edges, strengthen information systems, and also promote the use of genetic resources. And if you go, I saw there were some copies downstairs, where you can actually look at the recommendations. I would say it's really very good. It took a lot of work, but it's a very good. So to conclude, we all know that we need these plant-sedentary resources for the future. We cannot. It's our insurance, really, and we have to handle them properly. So we need. To summarize very briefly, we need long-term investment and stable and appropriate frameworks that support all of these aspects that I've been mentioning. And we think that the establishment of GRACE could be helping us in this context. And we're looking forward to future discussion with you on this now. So thank you very much.
I'm ready to stay here for one question that we received online because the timing allows it. I will read it from my phone. And it's from
it's from Pedro Revilla.
Okay. So the role of ECPGR for managing plant genetic resources is very important, though it has some limitations because it depends too on the will of or let's say the capacity of the participants in each country who have different methods of multiplication and management, etc. So that in practice, it is not possible to ask the ECPGR for a collection of varieties representative of several countries. Do you think it is going to be possible to create a central European bank of plant genetic resources like Fort Collins that maintain a copy of the collections from the diverse countries?
I would say that from a cost effectiveness perspective. I think it is good to share conservation responsibilities, and I think this is, for instance, what we've done in the Nordic countries, where we have a joint gene bank of five Nordic countries. And also, I think that the whole idea with ages is that we share conservation responsibility. And the fact is that ages symbolizes, let's say, it's a common virtual gene bank where we are sharing the conservation responsibilities. And I would say from an ECPGR perspective, I think this is a cost-effective way of doing it. Though we must be aware that conservation needs to be done properly, and that's why we're trying to help those that need help.
Thank you, Jens, for addressing this question. With that, I would like to thank you once again. It's very important to see this ECPGR, and it was, I think, important to show also what the activities are, and then to discuss later today how research infrastructure could be complementary to the activities that are ongoing for the ECPGR. And so next, it's my pleasure to bring Szonja to the stage from the International Seed Federation, and to also maybe elaborate on how the private seed sector in Europe, but also international, looks at the relevance of plant genetic resources and collaboration with public actors. So please, Szonja, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all of you. Thanks for inviting me here. And I was asked by Nick to talk about the seed sector perspective on the potential of plant biodiversity. So I'll try to do that in the 10 minutes allocated. So what I want to briefly mention is come back a little bit on how the plant breeding process works, what type of material is used usually in commercial breeding, what is the potential of that plant biodiversity that is available for commercial breeding, and what are the bottlenecks. And some of those have already been mentioned today. But I try to give you my perspective from the breeding point of view. So to come back on the breeding process, we have already seen a simpler scheme from Giovanni at the beginning of this session in the afternoon. But what I want to highlight here is, of course, the steps are the same. So first, selection of plant material, crossing, seed production, distribution. That's quite clear, I think, and quite simply illustrated here. But where we talk about the topic of potential of plant biodiversity is really related to this first step, so the selection of plant material. So I don't know how visible it's on the slide, but we have put on the slide, it's still actually a slide from Euroseas that we developed together with Nick. So commercial material, landraces, crop relatives, gene bank accessions, other material. It's kind of more or less the ranking of how we look at material when how breeders look at material when they try to identify what they are going to use in their breeding programs. But of course, this is not like a random selection, but the selection of plant material is guided by what we call the breeding goals. So what the breeder wants to do in its breeding program, what are the characteristics that he wants to breed for in the breeding program that he's going to establish. So that is basically the guiding element of how plant material is selected. So what is the plant material that is used mostly in commercial breeding? I think it's not going to be a big surprise for you that, depending on the crops, of course, between 90–95% of what commercial breeders use in their breeding programs is commercial varieties, it's modern variety. And it's only around 5–10% that they look into other types of plant genetic resources, mostly landraces, wild relatives, or other type of research material which might be a bit already further developed from wild relatives or landraces. So that's what I called here the non-commercial plant genetic resources, which is really like a smaller part. But as I said, in some crops it's more, in some crops it's really converted to zero, that breeders look into that type of material. And of course, the hundreds of thousands of crosses that are made with those material is part of the breeding process. So when I will talk about the potential of plant genetic resources, I will focus mostly on that one. because I think our session is also mostly on non-commercial PGR. And also because the potential of the commercial material is quite clear. So we don't really need to address that question. The reason why breeders use mostly commercial material is because they know what is in there. Access is very easy because it's on the market and either freely accessible or under the plant breeders' rights system. It's also freely accessible. So that's not an issue. So they know what they work with, and it's also material which is easy to work with. When we talk about the non-commercial PGR, the potential depends. I think the theoretical potential is one thing, but the practical potential depends on several factors for plant breeders when they look into this type of material. And I've put the main ones that I think have come up in our discussions within the sector. So first question is, how much information is available about the genetic resource? So does the breeder know? Does the breeder have access to the information on what the material can do? What are the characteristics and how useful it can be in the breeding program? How relevant that material is? Second, how easy or difficult it is to work with the material, which is not a minor concern, I would say, or not a minor bottleneck, because not all companies are well equipped to deal with issues such as linkage drag and other things that come up in breeding when you want to breed in one trait, but you don't want some others which might come with it. So that's also a challenge which will be a consideration for companies when they decide what material to go for. And of course, not a minor issue, how can the plant genetic resource be accessed? So for the first two bottlenecks, I think we have ways to overcome. And one very clear way how usually breeders try to overcome these bottlenecks about the information and how easy or difficult it is to work with the material is through pre-competitive research and collaborations. So what they do, they try to work together, not only amongst companies, but very often together with gene bank, together with public research, academia, to establish some public-private partnerships, like the AVA project, for instance, to have better characterization information, to have more knowledge about those plant genetic resources. So it's a joint effort, and most commercial breeders are very keen on these kind of collaborations, because in the end, it's a win-win situation for everybody, and the information will be available for everybody for the benefit of all the PGR community. Same for pre-breeding efforts, so trying to overcome how easy or difficult it is to work with the material. That's also done very often in collaboration, either between companies themselves or together with public research institutes. And I think that part works pretty well. So the bottlenecks are there, but we do have solutions to those to make actually to use the potential of the material which is available. But then the real question is whether it's available, and that's my last bottleneck, because the conservation and characterization efforts are of course key, but the plant genetic resources which are there, they can only deploy their real potential if they are accessible. So between the identifying the potentially useful PGRs and the use of them in commercial breeding, there is one step which is called access. And access is not easy, and we have already heard about that from Leida earlier on, and also other speakers, that there are difficult legal frameworks, complicated ones, multiple ones that breeders have to actually deal with in their practical work. And I would say that this is the most important bottleneck that we have to look into, because solutions are not so obvious. I think we all look for solutions, but yeah, somehow they don't come so easily. So the question is, how does access work, or does access work at all? We already heard earlier on that under the so-called bilateral framework, so the CBD and its Nagoya Protocol, I would say the use of material which is available theoretically under these ABS frameworks or legal frameworks is very limited, because there is hardly any successful access case, at least from the plant breeding sector. Companies do try it. If they find something which might be valuable and potentially very useful in their breeding programs, they do try it. But it's very seldom that actually result in a successful ABS agreement. Under the international treaty, I would say the system works. I think I heard earlier that it doesn't work. The system works from the breeder's point of view. It does work because access under the SMTA does work. However, the other question is how much it is used. And that's, I think there the figures are not so promising. And we did a survey internally within our breeders community to see, okay, how much commercial use is actually made of the SMTA. Also because we have these discussions ongoing about revising the SMTA. So we wanted to know. So we asked a couple of questions. How many SMTAs are companies using, for what crops and for what purposes? And 12 companies, we asked only 12 companies, the 12 top companies, so to say, who are also the biggest potential users of the system. And the answers were basically varying between 10 and 200, not more than 200. And that's not per year, that's since the existence of the SMTA, since 2006. So that's not a huge number. And even if we try to put up like a very exaggerated number, counting with, let's say, 20 biggest companies and really the highest number of 1,000 SMTAs, we only arrive to a minor figure. And there are some numbers from the CGIAR centers about the signed SMTAs, which is around 100,000. But with really exaggerated numbers, we would arrive to maximum 5% of those being signed for commercial use. And then, yeah, whether it's really only for commercial use or also for in situ services to gene bank, that's another question. So there could be part of that which is not really used for R&D in the end. And interestingly, coming back to one of the points Jens just mentioned, half of those SMTAs, more or less, that companies sign are for non-Annex 1 crops. Because of course, also under the AGES principle, gene banks hand out material which are not on the Annex 1 under SMTA. So that's a very good development, but what is available officially in the system is maybe potentially not so interesting. So the use of non-commercial genetic resources is actually practically quite limited. And the main issue is, at least from the breeder's point of view, is access. That we have difficulties with accessing that material. So is there potential? Yes, there is definitely potential. But to unlock this potential, we need to do a few things. I think we need to better recognize who are the partners in this whole PGR community and try to improve mutual trust, because I think not all actors have mutual trust in each other. And I think we are going in a very good direction, but there is still work to be done. We have to improve collaboration between public and private, and that's also in a very good path. But we also need the adequate policy and legal framework to allow access and use. And on that one, I think we really need to improve. And also that's true within the EU, because the policy development is, I would say, rather inconsistent. On one hand, there are rules and regulations put in place or planned to increase the use of disease resistances from land relatives and crop-wide relatives, like the new PRM discussion or the NGT regulation. Those are all trying to enhance the use of these type of plant genetic resources. But on the other hand, when we talk about CBD, Nagoya Protocol, International Treaty, and their implementation within the EU, the direction is not the same. So these inconsistencies need to be overcome somehow also within the European regulatory system, because otherwise we will never get there to really unlock the potential of these potentially valuable project resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. From the audience that I would like to ask you, it's from Zoltan. So first he asked, what do you think about collaboration between gene banks and breeders? I think maybe you elaborate on that, but he gives an example. Here in Hungary, we try to ask feedback from breeders how many of plant materials distributed by the gene bank were successfully used for breeding and became parents of new varieties or inbred plants. And he stated strongly, all breeders refused to answer our question. Is that a lack of trust here that we feel?
No, well, first, hello, I'm happy that you're listening. I think, well, on the first question, yes, I elaborated. I think there is quite a lot of collaboration between gene banks and breeders, and Theo mentioned a very nice example from TGN, where, yeah, breeders do collaborate a lot. And actually, I did think about that question yesterday, if I can give any figures on that, how much non-commercial PGR is contributing to commercial varieties in the end. But I don't have figures either, so I don't know why breeders refuse to answer the question, because I think it could be valuable information to know. But yeah, maybe it has to do somehow with tracking and tracing the presence of certain genetics. So I mean, they should have the answer because of the breeding books. But yeah, I tried to look into that question because, as I said, I also thought about it.
Like that, do you have a quick question?
Yes, especially in this one, you said that somehow the legal framework is more important as an impact within the breeding strategies, namely the use of plant genetics. Give a rough estimation percentage of these two factors: breeding strategy that is not tackle netting resources, and another one that is legal framework. What would be the percentage?
I said because the legal frameworks are more important because we don't have easy solutions to them, so to say. I think for the other bottlenecks, we do have solutions because we need to work better together, which is easier done, of course, than improving the legal framework. But I don't know. I think it depends on the crops, what the percentages would be, because in some crops, breeding strategies like, I don't want necessarily to pinpoint a certain crop, but if we talk about maize, breeding strategies are not really going into the direction that companies would go for wild relatives or land races, because at the time being, they are self-sufficient. They can respond to consumer demands mostly. But yeah, I guess at some point in time, it could also come in crops like maize that maybe other challenges come up, and then other type of material becomes more relevant.
Okay, thank you. And let's proceed then to the final presentation. So thank you again, Szonja. So we have talked a lot about plant genetic resources, the material itself, etc., and the initiatives. But this is not only a progress event; this is a progress emphasis event. So we're very pleased to have you here, Roland. And where you can explain as emphasis coordinator what's a bit the journey of emphasis, and it will be great to seek synergies in the future.
Thanks a lot, Nick. So very pleased to be here, and saying thanks already in advance for the organization. So it was mostly the colleagues from Progress organizing the meeting. We are co-organizers, but it was mostly you were. So really thankful for the invitation, for the discussion, and I think it's very useful and helpful to discuss jointly how we can use synergy as research infrastructures. So what I would like to talk about, it's so basically global challenges that was discussed a number of times as SDGs, and basically sustainable agriculture is in the center of many of those strategic developments to address many of those sustainable developmental goals. For us specifically, plant phenotyping is one of the key elements that's relevant for to address sustainable agriculture. So what we want to understand is nature and nurture of the phenotype. So how is it shaped, nature and nurture in a phenotype? Or to be more specific, we have this environment, we have the genetic makeup, which is different variety, different germplasm, but also genetic resources. And in the end, we want to understand how the plant performance, plant production results from this interaction. It could be described in a very practical terms, like high quality of biomass, novel characteristics and products. There is quite some demand for the yielding in stressful environment in terms of climate change, but also sustainable production, height intensification. And in this sense, there is quite a demand from many different communities to use plant phenotyping as a tool. And we, in the end, we do not claim that we provide a solution, but we provide a tool that may help on the way to get the solution hopefully. And the goal is the demand for plant phenotyping is addressing diverse crops and conditions, and there are many different crops conditions that we need to address. There is a specific needs for specialized infrastructure to characterize the plants in a very specific way, and for each crop, you may need a different tools. Then the environment simulation and monitoring. So basically envirotyping, which is another part of the story that we need to describe. So in the end, what we try to do, we have a very integrated multidisciplinary approach that requires technology expertise for many different fields that we try to address. Important point in the sense is Europe phenotyping has been established or pioneered in Europe. This is a development that we are still leading at this stage, I would claim, but competition is growing. And we need to work together as a European community to advance as a plant phenotyping community and address the relevant goals that we have in common. In this sense, that was recognized by many different countries. So talking about this road of emphasis, in many different countries developed their national research infrastructures, so addressing their specific goals in plant phenotyping or demands in plant phenotyping in different countries, and that happened in many different countries. Probably will not go into the details, but there are quite a number of them, and it's growing. The way to integration was in many different projects where we as a community try to use the capabilities developed in different countries in pan-European projects where we try to provide access, address specific scientific question. But you can imagine that on the one hand, solutions on the national level or solutions in projects that have a kind of a limited time period do not provide a long-term sustainable solution. That was the reason also to go towards emphasis as a long-term stable organization to integrate all those activities, integrate this pan-European activities. So basically what we also aim with progress to go into a long-term stable operation to provide services that are demanded. And in this sense, the key goals that we are aiming at, it's on the one hand, integration of infrastructures to have instrumented facilities across Europe, and linking data acquisition, data information systems and modeling, but also knowledge technology transfer to developing other new technologies that would fit back to this instrumented facilities, where you basically continuously improve your facilities, improve your competences to provide services to address relevant questions. In this sense, the road to operation, this would be one slide which is more, there is a lot of legal, financial, operational framework which is required on the road to become a fully operational infrastructure. So we had the support by the European Commission with in a preparatory phase project. The basic idea was to getting what is available in Europe, and based on that develop the first business plan. Currently, emphasis is in this implementation phase, which is also supported by the Commission with a goal to set up a national node, widen the membership, develop pan-European services. There is an interim general assembly, representatives from ministries that also are leading and guiding and making decisions in this process as a key decision-making body. And the final goal is to get this into this long-term stable operation where there is a stable funding, there is annual membership, and there is a full set of services. So this would be in terms of legal, financial, operational framework that needs to be done in parallel to many activities around the integrating community. And in this sense, integrating communities, pan-European communities, the emphasis started with 4 countries that applied to get on the roadmap. Then 7 countries joined the preparatory phase, 11 countries are currently in this implementation phase. But what is really important here that we have also 15 countries that do not have this political support in Europe, because this is a part of it's not really that straightforward. But we are, as European plant phenotyping community or plant phenotyping agriculture is needed across Europe. So it's important to engage basically everyone, try to be truly pan-European. So what we did a lot is integration of national community, support with national infrastructures, supporting this road mapping process and of these communities to engage communities within a specific countries to find a way to integrate their community and in the end become, as a long-term perspective, member of emphasis and contribute as a European member in this endeavor. In this sense, road to operation, so as already mentioned, so these research infrastructures, they were really the backbone. So this is really, there was a lot of investments in different countries, and this was really the backbone to develop also services. Key services that we started right at the beginning. So we did not actually, maybe in respect to EPDN 2020, those are transnational access projects or early community, advanced community projects. We did not have such a design base, but were just thrown into the deep water and provide services. So that was more or less the idea in EPDN 2020. And it was a starting community, advanced community, and it worked really well. So we had in total in those projects 200 experiments that we enabled and quite a number of publications that resulted from that. And I see that the coordinator of EPDN 2020 sitting here, Francois, in the back. When you have any questions, feel free to talk with Francois also about this development and the road towards emphasis to become fully operational, or we are still in the way to become operational infrastructure. Another step that we try to do, or where we are right in the middle right now, is widening the scope to a large extent. So plant phenotyping, discussing about the tool. So as a tool, you can use it for many different approaches. And in this sense, there is a number of projects like data management, so life science, digital life science, where we work with people from biomedical domains to discuss about data management, agroecology, plant microbes interaction, and basically topics like this. Important in this aspect is something where you can basically also participate. So right now we have projects called AgroCert and Microbes for Climate, where those projects are really large, and it's an integration of multiple research infrastructures to provide services towards agroecology, but also plant microbes interaction. And they are dedicated calls where plant phenotyping facilities can be used for many different purposes, and it's open to the community to apply. We had already a first call in AgroServe with more than 100 applications. The second call opened actually today. That's a good timing. We opened the call. And we have also Heba Ibrahim is sitting here, so she's managing basically this entire access. Feel free to discuss with Heba when you want to apply, and I can really recommend you to apply and then join and be part of the story, because this access is basically for free to use the services. Important in this context is also that we not only provide services, but also think about developing the next generation of services. So there is a project called Phenotyping, where the basic idea is to develop next generation tools. There will be some more about those projects tomorrow, so I'm not going to go there into details, but the idea is to develop tools and make those tools available in principle in the next round of access projects. Moving on then, so what we also did, we were supported also in this project to close the bracket. So projects like Emphasis Go, where we are supposed to work together with this interim General Assembly, with ministries to build emphasis. And the key elements that we did there was this mapping gapping. So what is available in Europe? So we did a really pretty wide gapping of facilities. There are more than 200 different facilities that are available, addressing different aspects. And they were grouped into 5 different categories: controlled environment, field. So we also divided field into intensive field, where you have a high level of equipment required, but also lean field, where you have more field sites and rather low cost or cost effective approaches to breeders application. And this is complemented by modeling and data management for data services. And based on that, we are currently in the process of developing services like access to those facilities, but also advancement of those tools towards next generation of services, to be up to date with all those tools that are developed there, but also industry engagement, data management and modeling, communication, and the communication is kind of the key elements that are part of the service portfolio. To be honest, it's still under development, so there is an ongoing discussion, but those might be the key elements that will be part of the story. And as such, emphasis was supported by the commission in many different steps, so we are really grateful for that. So this is the ongoing story. It's open also to you to participate there, and as such, thanks for the support. We do have further questions, so happy to address some questions now or within the next 2 days. So I'm really looking forward to a very useful, healthy discussions where there is lots of synergies that we can use. Then thanks a lot.
Thank you. Any questions? Any questions from the audience? Sure.
Just a comment, Roland, Matt very kindly agreed to be part of the Progress Advisory Group. So this is another link between emphasis and future PRISA strategy.
Maybe to respond to that, happy to do this. Yes, as an emphasis community, we could benefit from many different research infrastructures on this rope. So, and this was really very helpful, and I'm happy to give back so basically what we learned, so that we can also benefit and avoid some pitfalls that we stepped in.
No, we really appreciate that. So we're looking forward to engage with you and the partners today and tomorrow. So this was actually the final presentation of the first session of our marathon. And now we have about 15 minutes before we start the coffee break. So we have now time still for a Q&A till 10 past. It's not working properly? Okay. But this one will be working. So I think the battery is dead. So we finalized the presentations. Now we have still about 15 minutes left for questions, Q&A. So I'm looking here at the audience. Is there any question based on the presentations? Otherwise, I can address questions that were put online. So I think the microphone, yeah, so you have to come in front and pose your question and state your name.
So I'm Giovanni Giuliano, and I have, rather than a question, I have a comment from Szonja Csörgő about the use of PGRs in commercial breeding. Now, it is true, as you say, that it's much easier to use commercial varieties for breeding. Because they are free to use, they are well characterized, they are high yielding. But we should not forget that all commercial varieties have in their genome, most commercial varieties have in the genome resistance genes that come from wild relatives. Like I know the case of tomato, there is virtually no modern commercial variety that doesn't have the TM1 and TM2 resistance genes, and these come respectively from Solanum paucritus and Solanum peruvianum, which are two wild species. So the fact that private breeding sector can use varieties, commercial varieties for breeding, is due to the fact that somebody before inserted into these varieties resistant genes that come from the wild. And sometimes in crisis, this is not the case. For instance, the tobacco brown rugose virus arrived recently. The tomato brown rugose virus arrived recently in Europe. There are very few alleles of TM2 that give resistance to that virus, and there we have to again go back to the transgenic resources. Using 99, the example that I gave to you of the black disease of wheat, out of the commercial varieties tested, only about 5% carry genes that are resistant to that particular strain. So there you will have to go back to the wild material, to the land races, and find new sources of resistance. Once in a while, when a crisis happens, you have to go back to that material.
Okay, Giovanni, thank you for that statement. We have some online question. Theo, Do you have partnership collaborations with the private sector? That's the first question. And should I also give you the two?
Yeah.
Question? Yeah. Do you offer trainings or capacity development on dropouts relative collection, conservation, and management? It's from Hidelisa de Chavez from the Philippines.
Thank you for those questions. On the second part, I can easily say no. I mean, we would like to develop the capacity building activities further. For the moment, it's close to zero, I have to admit. We ran a bachelor level course, but that was terminated because of funding reasons. Regarding the first part, that we talk for the rest of the day, we have very many collaborative activities with the breeding companies. We do that via Quantum, and Ivo is here, which is a breeding company, a breeding organization in the Netherlands, not limited to Dutch customers, but a Dutch company. And they're very interesting is our phenotyping activities. So, and that feeds back to the previous question. We wouldn't eat lettuce if there was not that Bremia resistance from the relatives in the modern method. If you use only the commercial stuff for breeding, all innovation comes from the genome. All new stuff comes from elsewhere, right? If you only fish in the pool that you've been fishing in for so long, you can push up the levels of your yield for maize or for whatever crop. But if you want to have new traits, you have to go to the genome. Anyway, Bremia resistance, new prototypes come, companies indicate that they need to have new resistances. We organize that as a gene bank. Participating companies get part of the material that they want to screen. They agree about the screening protocols, so they all do it in the same way. Send back results to us. We do quality check, since each accession is sent to 2 companies so that we can compare the results. Combined data sets are sent back to the participating companies, and after 3 years, usually, the data becomes public for the world to use. So for the companies, the advantage is that they have early access. They don't have to screen everything, only part of it. For us, the advantage is that 1, the material is used, and 2, the value of the material is increased because we get that data back. That's fantastic. But the companies also help us without charging money in regenerating material, which is very positive and pretty large scale. In advisory boards, and so we're close to the companies, and they support us and we collaborate. I could give more examples, but that I'm talking too much already.
They don't run away.
Oh.
Yeah, you provoked some. You elicited some questions online. The other one is from Sheila. Hi Theo, can you say more about CGN's collaboration with national parks in Netherlands? This was initiated in the Farmers' Pride project. I'm wondering how this has developed since.
I hope it's Sheila, I know. Sheila. Nice to hear from you again, Sheila. Yes, that's not very big, I have to say, but when the issue of the crop-out relative came on our radar, we want to be a center for genetic resources and be really the focal point on all genetic resources, so also crop-out relatives. We wondered first, what are the crop-out relatives in my country? So we made an inventory, which one needed to be prioritized. So we did climate change scenarios to see which ones under the different climate change scenarios would be threatened in our country. So we could prioritize. For the prioritized species, we and there the nature organizations come into. We went to them because we wanted to create backup collections. In some cases, they were really delighted to hear that they were also conserving stuff that could help feed the world. So it was an eye-opener. They were not aware at all. Now we're talking about creating venues to create access to that material. And that's more complicated than it sounds. We can't put all those crop-out relatives in the gene bank, only make backups for the threatened ones. So we have to think about how to create access to the material in those parks and nature reserves areas. So made an inventory, which is online available now. Look for it, it's beautiful, I think. Raise the awareness, if a request comes to us, we are the liaison. We know who to approach and to go collecting and provide the material to the user. So but it's still in an early phase. We're talking to the big ones. We hope to roll it out to all the organizations involved in my country. Super.
Thank you, David. You can sit. Roberto Papa, I have a question for you. Again from Sheila. So, hi Roberto. Will the Citizen Science Initiative be sustained beyond the lifetime of the Increase project? I see there is an app, but presumably someone needs to manage that. And are there plans to develop the scheme to include other non-legume crops?
Well, we hope that we will be able to, promote this idea of decentralized conservation. So we are actively working on, let's say, a way to implement this approach for further. And the citizen science experiment clearly was not decentralized conservation per se. It was done on bees because we found that it was more easy to plan it and be more easy because everybody probably in the school may germinate some beans. But I agree totally that we have to expand the range of species, but also that's the point. We have to develop a plan to expand this strategy and also to promote the access to genetic resources in a wide way.
Thank you, Roberto. Szonja, there are some questions for you. Could you? Have you responded? Okay, so are there any other questions, statements? Or Veronique? Veronique, yeah, sure, go ahead. Feel free. And then who else wants to address a question? We have to unfortunately come forward. Veronique, go ahead.
Okay, we are discussing about sharing data, phenotypic data between gene banks, but also from the citizens. And I was wondering how we can engage also breeder operation data, because when they use the plant genetic resources coming from gene banks, it would be very useful also to have back information on this accession. It's my first question, and my second question is we discussed about the role of citizens about the developing data amendment, but also we are saying that we need more and more quantitative evaluation of the trait. And it's a question for Roberto, how it is possible to have both more and more accurate quantitative evaluation of the trait and done by the citizen. Thank you.
Thank you for the challenging question. One of the issues that we started with in this project was exactly this. We need to improve the utilization of genetic resources, and we cannot waste all the information that are coming from users and could come from users. But then you have the issue on how you develop a database, and we cannot integrate in a way the database are organized today all this information. And so probably the solution is to add some additional approaches that is based maybe on technology like, let's say, information technology like artificial intelligence and blockchain to be able to decentralize this type of information in a way to accommodate this data by the input of the users without strong management, let's say the less management possible of validation of the data from the gene bank database. But then we cannot have this information as the same quality of database of the gene bank. So we try to use that. And then the other aspect is to develop approaches like the one that we have developed, and we talked about that tomorrow, about the phenotyping strategy for citizens. We have developed an app based on a list of traits that are basically descriptors of gene banks. And on that, we have developed these methods to score both alphanumeric data and also images that are, and we are developing the pipeline to use images to infer the information about the disease. And we have collected a number of pictures that are really patterning. And then we are trying to use that with artificial intelligence to develop tools for this type of, let's say, collection of data that are being very powerful.
Can I add something to the first question?
Yeah, sure.
Because it was about how to incentivize readers to share information that they might generate. So I think maybe just 3 points. When in some cases they upload information just by themselves because they decide to share the information, so they upload this information in publicly available databases. In many cases, they work together in projects, and in that case, the information becomes automatically available. But there are the cases when they access the material themselves, they generate the information. It's their own research result, and they are not going to share like that because they are competitors with each other. So if one company made investments in generating all that data, it's we cannot really expect them to share it with everybody because they made the investment. So it's a competitive business. So they need to be aware of the fact that there is the social good or the public good aspect, but in the end, it remains a business. So they are competitors to each other.
I did not expect to come here and ask my question. Yeah, I'm not sure what the question is. Do you see the commercial materials and gene banks as completely different stories, or is that the issue? I explain myself. When I'm Professor Pardieu from in when we work with panels, we have commercial material, but we have also land sometimes, and we have varieties from farms. So should we see that as a continuum or something separate? And what would be the strategy of progress or I'm not sure the question is for you.
We will address that question later. I thought, and it's okay, Jim, you think, because it's more, or no, if you want to address it now, but it's more a discussion about the progress of the Grace Terrain itself.
In one word, continue.
Yeah.
Observation, yeah, sure.
But we'll
Okay, sorry,
the question was too early.
No, it's not too early, but I mean, we will have a dedicated session that will address. Marianne, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Baba. Just a reflection, hearing Theo and Robert. We had a very nice, positive story with Theo, with quality management for conservation and maybe for characterization with high standards and so on. And we get such information, we wish to get such information available for everyone. We heard Robert, who has part of this type of characterization and who tried to encourage participating study, something like that. And I was wondering, hearing you in the last answer, how these two methodologies could correct it. And hearing your idea of having maybe decentralized or local database, we may think, this is maybe for the future of progress, we may think of something with a sort of confidence rank about information that is provided or accessible. It may help to have to give a sort of credit in information which has been acquired through very strict guidelines and protocols for evaluation or characterization, and information that may be very important and that may help a lot of users in a different way, maybe, but that may help them to access to a minimum or a sort of rough information about genetic resources. And I think that this is for the next phase. Services provided by Grace, maybe, to think about a degree of confidence about providing information.
Thank you very much. Marianne, maybe Roberto, you want to respond? And then we have one final statement question.
I think that the two approaches need to coexist and integrate. But I just want to make a mention one aspect related, for instance, GWAS application. And we know that what we need is number of gametes that should be recombining. So that is important. And when you go on a very high number of gametes, then the situation became more complex. If you organize an experiment in 2 or 3 locations with a big number of parts in a classic way. So in that case, I think you are almost forced, if you want to check not only, let's say, elephants, as Roberto Pudorova usually say when you mention about major proteins, but you want also to pick the small mouse. And I think that this aspect is very important, because sometimes, even if in some cases with a high number of data, a little bit less quality data on itself may, in any case, a higher power. While on the other hand, you need to have very robust data sets, very high quality, that also bring the things strong and on which you can also weight yourself and avoid to fall down easily. So the two things should be very integrated. I think.
I'm Luis Guas from the Spanish Research Center. And my question is for Sonia and related. You have talked, I mentioned that the bottleneck is access of seed from the banks and also the information. And okay, it's access to the legal framework or whatever, but there are initiatives to get facilitate the access, facilitate the information. But from my side, our mandatory is to conserve and to use the material. So I have the impression in some cases that you take the seeds and information and run. We don't have any return, and if you have used this material for new variety, I don't mind if it's confidential. If it's in one material, it's in another, but I need to have any indicator that you have used the material for a commercial variety. Because otherwise, I have the number of accessions as an indicator of my activity, but I have no indicator of the real use of the material. I have the SMPA that I have signed, but as you said, this is not indicator, but in some cases, the number of SMPAs are not related with the final use. They get the material and sometimes they get it, they put in the fridge and then forget them. So we need some involvement of the companies in that sense. Just forget it's fun for us, it's an obligation for us.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, maybe we take the seed and run with it. We also consider.
Okay.
So, of course, I didn't talk about that because I would have to talk about the potential of the material for you and not about conservation. But yeah, companies also care, of course, about conservation because without conserving, there is nothing to use. So they do conserve themselves, of course, but they also do a lot of collaboration with feedback for conservation. So they will generate material, they give it back to the gene bank. They also develop sometimes characterization information, and then they give it back to the gene bank. So there is a lot of collaboration ongoing. But what I understand you want to know, kind of the same question that the Hungarian person asked, how much is ending up or what is ending up in commercial material? And you want to know it for yourself because you're interested, not because you have an obligation to know. So I think It depends actually, and now I'm going to talk against myself because we definitely don't want to have legal obligations to track and trace presence of material and the need to report on those. But for instance, the benefit sharing obligation under the international treaty, if you have restrictions on the availability of commercial material, then you will know. Because you only have benefit sharing obligation if something is in the commercial material, and then you have to share the benefit. You don't necessarily have to say what's contributed to what, or what is the exact percentage of contribution of the material to the periodic value, but you will not be
I
able
don't
to
need
say
that. I don't need that.
But you will know which extension, because the benefit sharing obligation is based on that. But that's for the time being, it's a restricted obligation. But I would not say that we should set up these kind of obligations because that's quite heavy. If there is a need to know, I think there are other ways to talk about this.
Yeah, at the end, we need indicators of that. Yes.
Yes, but it's the second time I'm getting this question today, so I'm very happy to bring it back and discuss with our community how we can improve.
Okay, and thank you very much for the exchange and the Q&A. And if it's okay for the coordinator as well, then I will announce now the coffee break.